There have been times where I've tried to explain this concept by quoting one of my favorite lines from one of my favorite movies. Remember the Titans. At one point, when the coach gets in the face of a few of his athletes and is trying to confirm to them his own authority. So he gets right up in their face and he asks the question, "Who's your daddy?" And they're like, "Huh?" And he's basically saying, "I'm your daddy. Forget mom and dad at home. I own you now. You belong to me. And as long as you're on my team, you're going to play by my rules because I'm your daddy." And as I've talked to students about this, I've asked them, theologically, that's a good question. Who's your daddy? How would you respond? Two of their answers come easily. First, well, I'm a child of God, so who's my daddy? I have a father in heaven. In fact, I have a mother in heaven as well, and my parents in heaven are the parents of my spirit, through a process known as spiritual birth. We don't understand the mechanics, but that's okay. Now, second round, do you have another set of parents? Let me ask you now, you're born now, and now who's your daddy? And the students always know that one too. Well, I have an earthly father and an earthly mother. Okay, great. What are they the parents of? Well, my physical body. Good. Through what process? Physical birth. Awesome. So we now have two sets of parents, and they have given us a spirit and a body through spiritual birth and physical birth. I said, okay, now this is where the plot thickens. You get to pick a third set of parents. Who's your daddy now? Now, as I've asked my students, who's the set of parents you can pick, some of them look at me really confused and they're like, your in-laws? Like, who's your daddy? My father-in-law? I'm like, no, you don't pick them. Don't get me wrong, I love my father-in-law, but I didn't pick him. I picked his daughter. And he came in on the package deal, and I'm grateful for that, okay? But I didn't choose, I chose my spouse. So no, that doesn't count. Who's your daddy? By choice. And when it finally dawns on them, they realize, oh, my daddy is Jesus if I choose him. Now some push back and go, no, Jesus is our elder brother, he's not our daddy. But think about what King Benjamin says. No, when you take on the covenant, you become children of Christ. He spiritually begets you as his sons and daughters. That's a powerful imagery. Jesus as my father? Well, because I've taken his name upon me. Yeah, I have his image engraven in my countenance. There's family resemblance. This is starting to make sense. Well, and if Jesus is your daddy of the covenant, then who's your mama? Since fathers always have mothers alongside. So, thank you, Paul, for clarifying this one so we don't have to speculate. Husbands, love your wives even as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. Nice. So if Christ is my father, then the church is my mother. They're the parents of my covenant. Oh yeah, and what's the process? It's spiritual rebirth. It's always a birth that goes along with this, right? And so yes, Christ is the father of my covenant. He presides and provides and protects. The church is the mother of my covenant. She nurtures me in the faith. It's an amazing set of parents that we're choosing. But like I said, we're choosing. And if we don't choose Jesus, then what's our default choice? What's the other alternative? Well, Jesus made that abundantly, brutally clear to these Pharisees. Ye, since you haven't chosen me, are of your father, the devil. Yikes. That's our other option. If I don't choose Jesus as my father, then I've allowed Satan to choose me as his son or daughter. He has sealed me his. That's a phrase from the Book of Mormon. So even Satan believes in the eternal family. It's not a process of birth, it's the process of death, spiritual death. And he brings sin into our lives instead of salvation. He's even married, by the way. If Jesus married his church, then of course Satan married his too, also known as the great and abominable church, also known as the whore of all the earth. Figures Satan would marry a prostitute, someone unfaithful to him, even as he is unfaithful to us. But also, what's another name for the great and abominable church? What's another name for the great and spacious building? What's another name for the whore of all the earth? It's the world. Remember, Jesus says, the world doesn't hate you, it hates me. I'm not of the world, you are. Jesus cannot marry the world. He's married to his kingdom. But Satan's married to his. And he, the God of this world, the ruler of the kingdoms of the earth, with all of its wickedness and pride, materialism, vanity. This is Zion versus Babylon. This is the kingdom of God versus the kingdom of the devil. This is a custody battle. And we're the child that gets to choose which parents we'll end up being with. Ironically, because Satan knows that nobody's going to choose him over Jesus, he usually hides behind his wife and tries to hide Jesus behind his wife and present the mothers as the option. Satan doesn't want to ask, who's your daddy? Because nobody's going to choose him. He wants to say, who's your mama? In fact, which mother would you prefer? And the thought of, this is mother, worldly mother. This is the good life. It's like, she'll let me do anything I want. I can have Skittles for breakfast. She doesn't care. Well, that's the problem. She doesn't care. The other mother, the church, does care. And she has commandments and asks things of us. So does her husband, Jesus. But he also fills the gap with grace and allows us to grow up in him. You understand the analogy I'm trying to present? Jesus presents it here so powerfully. Take your choice. Jesus or Lucifer. Jehovah or Satan. Zion or Babylon. When he says he was a murderer from the beginning, what's Jesus instead? He is the life of the world. When he says that he abode not in the truth, he's a liar from the beginning. And what's Jesus? He is the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Jesus is trying to make this as clear as he possibly can. Choose you this day whom you will serve. Choose you this day whom you will choose as your parents. But choose wisely.